My guest for the morning is Frida Prempeh, and Frida Prempeh is a member of Parliament for Tano. I've known her for quite a while, and it's a privilege to have you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. We would want to get on with a lot more of the discussions, but quickly, let's rush to the studios of the Super Morning Show on Joy FM, where we have Tsatsu Tsikata, former Chief Executive of the GNPC, having an interview with Jansen, and then we'll come back. We'll do a lot more of the discussions following through.
I have outstanding entitlements, and I would like those addressed so that I would cease to be connected with the corporation, because in their letter they talked about a process of my being sort of disconnected from the company, the corporation. And so I pointed out in my letter to them that those end of service entitlements were part of what needed to be addressed, and I never heard back from them. So, you know, that again is just the reality.
But I do think, I mean, just before we go for the business news, that this is an important clarification to make. We've got more to talk about, obviously, but an important clarification to make.
It is.
You were never written to.
Never.
And asked to stop being the GNPC CEO.
Never. I was
by
never.
anyone.
By anyone. That is a fact.
Okay. When we come back from the Joy Business Report, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about your conditions of service and what exactly it stated, whether or not end of service benefit was actually something that you were legally entitled to by your contract. We'll talk about the issues surrounding accusations made by KT Hammond. He talks about this payment being criminal. We'll find out whether there were others who were entitled to these payments, and indeed we'll talk about Tsatsu Tsikata's stewardship at the GNPC. He's here himself to tell us all we need to know, right after the Joy Business Report.
And so that is what is ongoing, well, in the studios of the Super Morning Show, Joy FM, where Jansen is speaking to the former Chief Executive of the GNPC, that is Tsatsu Tsikata. In the meantime, though, they're going for their business news, and thereafter they'll be coming in. But foremostly, what has been the list of many people, Frida, is the subject of the current utility hikes. So we've had an official of ISODEC. It's a pro-poor charity, and we know that it's a think tank. They've always been talking about issues of amenities, things that affect the poor in our country, and they are not too happy. Especially Steve Mantia, who works with ISODEC, is saying that the hikes are as a result of government passing almost like liabilities to the ordinary Ghanaian because of its inefficiency or inability to manage the economy. What do you say?
Yeah, let me first of all say a very good morning to your cherished viewers, especially to those of us watching from my constituency, Tano North constituency. And let me also commend Stephen Mantia for always fighting for the vulnerable in society, especially for those of us coming from the deprived communities and all that. I think that they are not taking this fight alone. It's all about Ghanaians. It's about the average Ghanaian out there. What is the motive for the increase in these utility tariffs? If you increase salaries by 10%, looking at the economic situation that we find ourselves in, why is PRIC increasing electricity and water bill up to about 69% or 60%? I don't really get it. The average Ghanaian out there, how much does he earn at the end of the month? If I tell you that the people who earn about 100 Ghana cedis at the end of the month, 150 Ghana cedis at the end of the month, and you ask the person to go and pay 60% for electricity, meanwhile he's not even getting lights. The water is not even flowing. I live around Agboba, North Legon area, and if I tell you that for the past 8, 6, 7 years, I can count the number of times that I've had running water. I've had to sink a borehole. How many people can sink a borehole? So Stephen Mantia, I think he should not take the fight alone. I've heard Kofi Kapito also talking about it, and I want the TUC to come out strongly against this tariff increase, because it's going to affect not only the ice water seller out there on the street, not only the dressmaker, not only the hairdresser, the industries are going to be affected, companies are going to be affected, and the ripple effects on the average consumer. At the end of the day, we are going to pay. Because if, for instance, a company has to pay 69 or 70% increment of electricity, at the end of the day, he's going to add it to the cost of production. So you and I are going to pay. So, of course, I don't think considering the situation that we find ourselves in, considering the doomsday that we find ourselves in, considering the hardships that we find ourselves in, considering the timing, I don't think it's worth increasing light bill and water bill by such a margin. Even though I've heard the Ghana Water Company also talking about the fact that they were even demanding more because they are spending more. But at the end of the day, you ask yourself, are you getting your money's worth? There are so many inefficiencies within the system. You see pipe bursts all over the place, doomsday all over the place. Government owes electricity, government owes water bill, government is not also fulfilling its parts. So at the end of the day, why should you push government irresponsibilities on the average Ghanaian?
Well, we do understand all that. Now, particularly when, for example, there's this very quotation, and it's coming from Dr. Steve Mantia, saying government is in charge of the economy, but it has been mismanaged. Why should we be the one to be punished for somebody's incompetence?
Of course.
We do understand that, but those becomes liabilities for which, no matter what we think, government is managing the economy on our behalf.
And so
the liabilities of government is the liability of the people of Ghana. Who should pay for it?
Why should government create liabilities for us to pay?
Well, government may not necessarily have intentionally created liabilities.
If it's not intentional, then you are not managing the economy well. Then you are mismanaging the economy. So that's why we talk about incompetencies here. So the government is not being competent, even in the area of delivery of electricity, delivery of utility bills. So why do you have to push your incompetencies, your inefficiencies, ineffectivenesses on the average Ghanaian? At the end of the day, you and I suffer. And you can't even afford to pay school fees. You can't afford a day's meal for your children. There are so many problems. As a member of parliament, I know what comes to my doorstep every morning. You have to pay school fees, you have to pay health, hospital bills, you have to pay even utility bills. Everything comes to your doorstep. And at the end of the day, if government is mismanaging the economy and you push all these burdens on the average Ghanaian, you're not helping the economy to grow. And I don't think I don't really get it. It's not the best. And that's why I'm saying that TUC would have to step in and do something for this issue to be addressed. Because every crude oil, for instance, is going down on the international market to about $43 now.
Wow.
So
for Brent crude, it's even $40. And for light crude, we have about $38. As the prices,
everything of us is going up. So you ask yourself that, what is the problem? If government can't manage or can't prioritize, can't make things work well, why should the average Ghanaian out there?
Well, Frida, let me run this by you. It may be a personal question and also an analysis that you have to make from your own personal experiences. Which would we want as consumers? And I'm putting you in this very step because you're also a consumer. That we don't pay a lot more and keep experiencing what we're experiencing, or we want to generate with our own funding, either by generators, etc., or inverters that we'll have to buy ourselves. Which one is more comfortable?
No, how many people can afford the use of a generator? Let me tell you, you buy a generator, that doesn't end it. Even installing the generator, you install it at a cost. Fueling the generator is at a cost. If a hairdresser uses...
That's why I'm asking which one is the alternative.
No, I'll come back to it. If a hairdresser uses a generator, we walk into her salon. There's no light. She will tell you that if I have lights, I would have charged you 10 Ghana cedis. But without light, I'm charging you 15 Ghana cedis. So who pays? The end user. At the end of the day, the end users suffer. If I'm getting my money's worth, if there's value addition, I wouldn't mind paying so much for it. But at the end of the day, I'm not getting my value's worth. I don't even see light. My area, for instance, sometimes I ask myself that, what is the problem within this area? As this morning, the lights are off.
In which community are you living?
Around North Legon.
Okay.
Sometimes for 48 hours. The whole of this week, and from morning to like 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Yesterday, the lights came on around 10 p.m. This morning, it's off again. So what can you do? Productivity becomes very low. At the end of the day, nothing is done. There are a lot of these young people around my area. They are into block making. They have block making factories. Every time I drive past their areas, I realize that they're just sitting there. Sometimes, like we are sitting here, thinking of what to do, because maybe they don't even have money to buy a generator. So the issue is not with you paying more for electricity or paying more for water.
Well, you may have espoused all these points, but at the end of the day, Frida, it doesn't take away the fact that for all the things that you've said, having the alternative of paying more to get perhaps better services,
but we are never going to get better
even
service.
advocating that we have better services is far off better than not having at all and experiencing, if you can't afford a generator, constant power supply, and if you can't even afford, have to perhaps even spend a lot more on maintaining your generator or your inverter or getting other alternatives of power supply.
You see, Roland, the issue is with efficiency.
Yes, we do understand that.
The issue is with efficiency.
But
and
the critics always say, or the proponents always say, just like Dr. Charles Rekubrobe also say, that it's more like a chicken and egg situation. You're just caught between a rock and a hard place. So you have a rock, you have a hard place. So where do you want to be?
No, but you go to the developed countries where they don't really experience power outages. They don't experience so. There's so much efficiency, effectiveness, management within the system. Come to our part of the world, it's a different ballgame.
Well, we do understand, but we're in this state.
The PURC always will come back and tell us they're increasing the tariffs because of efficiency. Now, if they should come back and tell us the truth. If government owes them, if it's because of the debt that they want to impose it on average Ghanaian, then they should tell us. If it's efficiency, they should tell us, because recently when they increased utility bills, they were talking about efficiency. I have not seen any difference.
The point is, we all know the numbers. Government, we're told the state of Ghana owes the utility company so and so amount, and as a result of that, if government was supposed to have fulfilled such obligations, they would have reinvested such monies back.
But the government fulfilled
No,
its part?
it's not fulfilling. One.
Yes.
And now we need also to re-engineer the type of equipment we have and the facilities we have to produce power. That is being done by government. At the end of the day is that we have realistically some of these challenges. Yeah, and the challenges are being improved. We haven't come to a certain timeline in which we say we have come to the middle point where we're improving. So we have to face the reality. Now the reality is we have to pay more. Do we criticize government constantly and saying you are mismanaging the economy, and as a result of that, the buck stops with you and so don't put on the increments? Or you have to say constantly, well, we want to be in the state in which we are.
Roland, I can assure you that if Ghanaians agree to pay this increment of 60–70%, nothing is going to change. Because nothing has really changed ever since PURC increased.
That's putting the cart before the horse.
Yes, nothing has really changed. There's not been any efficiency in the system. The do so is ongoing. We are not having running water, even though there's been some sort of infrastructural improvement somewhere that they talk about, but I have not experienced it anyway. So I don't think that there's going to be anything different after we've paid so much. But my problem is with government and with PURC. If the issue is with government owing PURC, if the issue is with government debt, if the issue is government not doing its part of what it's supposed to do, the PURC should come out. They should call a spade a spade. Why do you want to impose all these bills on the average Ghanaian when we're already suffering? Christmas is just at the corner. Now people are not even going out to buy things from other places to come and sell, because when they bring them, people will not buy. I mean, you see people sitting behind their
Former Chief Executive of Volta River Authority, Charles Rekubrobe, is reported to have said the increments are justified. He argued that government's failure to manage the economy does not provide enough grounds for people like you and I, who keep saying that the economy has been mismanaged, to reject our duty to ensure that the service providers are kept in business. I'm just putting
well,
the right
he's been
pronouns.
A former chief executive of VIO.
So he's telling the truth, is he not?
Well, that is his opinion. He's entitled to it, and I'm also entitled to my opinion. I think I'm speaking for majority of Ghanaians. If he can afford to pay so much, majority of Ghanaians cannot afford to pay so much for something somebody has mismanaged, somebody didn't do right.
Granted, it's because of mismanagement. So what should we do? The point is we've been confronted with the issue, and that's what Dr. Charles Rekubrobe is saying. If we really want power, then we must be ready to pay for it.
Well, then I think that PURC will have to go back to the drawing board, meet with the stakeholders and see how best they can, arrive at a certain rate, break even somehow, to see that the average Ghanaian is somehow cushioned somewhere, because you can't impose all these bills on the average Ghanaians. We are not saying that government should not increase tariffs at all, but I think the percentages are high. It's too high for us now.
We'll see how that goes. Have you been getting some negative comments or reactions from your constituents, for example, on this very subject?
Sure. They've been calling me. And that's why I've been told you that there are some people who earn as low as 100 Ghana a month. Somebody called me and told me that Auntie Frida earned 100 Ghana.
Somebody who earns 100 Ghana a month shouldn't be having to pay a high electricity bill.
No,
You shouldn't be owning the television set. I'm not saying you are not entitled to it.
No, he lives in a compound house. And he pays like, I think, 10 or 15 Ghana a month. And looking at the increment, he knows he's going to pay about 30 or 40 Ghana out of the 100 Ghana a month. Meanwhile, the 100 Ghana is even not forthcoming because he works with Zoom Lion. And for 7 months, he's not been paid. So it's a serious issue. That's why I'm saying that the PURC, TUC, all stakeholders should come on board. Let's brainstorm again. Let's see how best we can revisit this issue, and if they can even reduce it a bit. We are not saying that they should not increase it at all, because you can't afford to sit back and look at that PLC will never increase utility bills. Definitely it will come to pass. But I'm talking about the percentage increment here. I think it's high. The 70 to 69% is too much for that.
So we want to reduce. The TUC has been almost supporting your call as well. You think they should hit the streets?
They've been supporting our call as well, but I haven't heard too much from them.
You want a lot more advocacy on this.
Mr. Someone should come out. Yes, there should be a lot more advocacy.
What do you advocate they do?
Well, they should go back to the drawing board with PURC. And I think with Stephen Mantia and other stakeholders and other NGOs who are into some of these utility issues, I believe it's a human institution, and definitely they will listen to the average Ghanaian. They will listen to the majority of us who are talking about the increment. I'm not saying that, and people should not get me wrong, I'm not saying that it should not be increased at all. But my point is, considering the timing, considering the economic situation that we find ourselves in, considering the Jumso situation, taking all these factors into place, I think that we can meet at a point. The 69% and the 59% is too much for an average Ghanaian now.
Who is average?
I am.
All right.
The average person out there, I wouldn't want to say the vulnerable, but they are young
It's too
people.
much for you and I.
Yeah, all of us. You see, the point is...
You're average. It's okay.
It's all this happening.
Senior fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs says Ghana has a lot to learn from Ivory Coast in terms of how to manage an economy. And we know that we've been saying that the underlying factor is that the economy has not been managed adequately, or if not poorly, and so as a result we're having all these hikes. Now, there was a program put together by the IEA, and in which a number of participants also posed questions to the IEA officials who had addressed the forum, and they felt that, for example, you take Ivory Coast, they're just coming out of a conflict, but was doing so well. They've turned the economy around. In terms of growth, economic stability, don't have the kind of inflation that we have here. Everything's stable. They also grow. We need to learn from them, and that's a question from, that's a response from Dr. John Kwache, who has been analyzing the economy a number of times. What do you make of this? I know that your vice presidential candidate addressed the media, especially on the economy and the budget that was presented by the finance minister just about a week or two ago.
Yes, I share the same view with Mr. Kwache, and I would want to commend Ivory Coast for coming this far out of a conflict zone and all that. I believe they've been able to come this far because they put the systems and structures in place. But if for a country like Ghana, we've been rated as the second in corruption in Africa, how can you stabilize your economy when you don't prioritize your issues? When you are paying all sorts of judgment debts, when you are growing all sorts of trees in the dry season, when you are spending money on guinea fowls that cannot be traced or that cannot be found, when you are spending money on JIDA, when you are overspending your budget, when you are not setting your priorities right, how can you stabilize your economy? You can't stabilize your economy. We need to put systems and structures in place. And I think Dr. Kwache has hit the nail right on the head. Now the economic growth has been on the decline from 14% of GDP to a projected 4.1% in 2015. For a country like Ghana, I've always told myself that Ghana is not a poor country. Our problem is with management and leadership. During Kwame Nkrumah's era, we only had cocoa and gold. But we were able to put certain structures in place. Kwame Nkrumah was able to do so many things. Now we have oil. And we have to fly our oil money to Brazil. If we have to use our oil money to pay as gracias, if we have to use our oil money to put up GNPC buildings to the tune of $70 million and all that, if we have to use our oil money, we spend $27 billion on research. If you have to use the oil money spending on capacity building, how do you expect the economy to grow?
So you're saying the priorities have not been right?
The priorities have not been right.
As a result of that, we're having all these problems with the economy.
Coupled with this doomsday situation that we find ourselves in, high cost of production in the country, everything is on the decline now, nothing is moving now. How can we stabilize this economy? And we are not careful, like he's saying, we may be going to HIPIC, because everything is not getting right. We are not getting everything right. And I share Dr. Akwachi's view. There are low levels of public investment, high business cost inputs, effects on microeconomic instability. Now look at what is happening at DVLA. Look at what is happening at GNPC. I just saw the interview you had with Dr. Tsatsu Tsikata on this GNPC issue. These were all talking about the oil money. Now, if you are telling us that you are entitled to the money, then what is your beef in going to court? Was Katie Hammond wrong in talking about it? If you are spending so much, $1 million as gracia, when people in my constituency at Subonpine, children are sitting on the floor and writing on the floor.
Which community is Subonpine?
Subonpine.
Okay. Talking about the GNPC, the former chief executive is back on the Super Morning Show. We'll take some few excerpts from him, and then we'll come back also, do a lot more analysis on what he said and the way forward.
You know, taken to various courts at different times. I challenged certain decisions to take me to a particular court in the Supreme Court and so on. So I really had many preoccupations at that time to deal with.
Yes, although, I mean, I've got to say, we perhaps can't afford to downplay too much this legal, issue, because what you're saying is that you're entitled to certain end-of-service benefits. So it's important to determine whether your service did indeed end, so that you can then make these claims, is it not?
Well, I suppose one way or the other, I would have entitlements. If my service didn't end, and there is a wish to end it now, because I have no wish, frankly, to be back in that role anyway. So, I mean, one way or the other, the service has to end at some point, and that is a point that probably has to be determined by mutual understanding.
So, which perhaps lends some credence to those who say that this payment is not really following the right process, because at the very least you must either resign or be removed officially to your knowledge before anyone can go about deciding to make ex gratia or end of service benefit payments to you.
Well, what I'm saying to you is that if you assume that I have not ended my service because I have not been communicated with, then I would be owed payments in respect of continued, But I'm saying that that is not a practical appreciation of the situation that I experienced in 2001 onward. Between 2001 and 2008, I was nowhere near GNPC. I was either in court or in some prison, or that's the reality. So I don't think that practically anybody who considers that my service to GNPC ended from the time that I ended my leave and so on, I mean, they would not be wrong to do that. And I myself have no intention of going back on the basis of whether I received a communication or not. I don't have any intention of doing that. So.
Okay. So, as far as you're aware, your tenure as CEO ended in September 2001 when your leave came to an end.
Yes.
Not in December 2000 when the president announced that you were to become an advisor on energy with immediate effect, according to the announcement in the Daily Graphic.
Yes, because as you know, in any organization, when you have outstanding leave and so on, it has a consequence for what is regarded in the organization as the end of your service. And in my particular case, as I've said, even though the announcement was made, I had outstanding leave, which I took, especially when I did not really receive any communication directly about the new assignment and so on. And that was that. And again, in the circumstances, because within a few days of that announcement, there was an election and so on and so forth.
Okay. So the announcement said with immediate effect, but what you did instead was you proceeded on leave, which is a different thing, is it not?
Well, the announcement said I was to be assigned as advisor with immediate effects. I didn't receive a communication in respect of this new assignment. And as I said, that, again, in practical terms, was overtaken by events, because within probably 3 or 4 days, I think, of that announcement, there was an election. So, I mean, I could have sat waiting for a communication about that. But once the election took place, it was obvious that a new government was coming to power, and that government took a position specifically in relation to me. I mean,
which you have elaborated on quite clearly.
Yeah, what point would there be in my expecting any further communication?
Okay. Now, I'm curious, you were very good friends with former President Rawlings. I mean, you defended him during the revolution times, and you remained close. In fact, I learned that you actually went to the same preparatory school with him. So you've been friends for a very long time. Did it surprise you that he would announce your removal and not communicate directly with you about it?
I don't think this is about friendship. I didn't serve GNPC because I was a friend of President Rawlings. I served GNPC because I guess I was considered as having certain capabilities to be able to serve in that capacity. And President Rawlings was president of this country. It's not about friendship.
But he was your boss.
And he had a system within which he operated, and within that system, an announcement was made. As I said, I did not receive a communication in respect of that announcement. And that's as far as it goes.
But what did he tell you personally about this? I mean, why did he make this decision?
We didn't have any personal discussion. I mean, we don't have personal discussions about matters that are essentially official matters to do with my role in a corporate body. I don't think it's a matter of personal discussion.
I mean, I've got to confess, I find that a bit odd. I mean, you often point to us taking the more practical, view, and I've got to say, if I'm friends with my boss,
at the time that this announcement was made, actually, I was outside the country. I came back probably within a day or so, but I mean, again, as I've said, within a couple of days of that, there was an election. Being practical, you've got to look at the circumstances of the period. I don't think that the preoccupation of either President Rawlings at that time or me personally had to do with being at GNPC or being at the ministry. There was an election. I think that was the bigger picture of the country.
Although the decision was made, we can't pretend it wasn't. There must have been a reason.
It was announced, so it was made.
Yes, but he never spoke to you. I mean, have you spoken to him since, to date?
Not about that matter.
Wow.
We have not spoken about that matter.
Deliberately avoided it, or why would you not speak about it?
Of deliberately avoiding it. I mean, there was no reason to. As I told you what my preoccupations were in 2001. And I think those were major preoccupations. What was announced then had nothing to do with my dealing with those preoccupations. Those were really what I had to cope with in 2001.
Do you feel he should at least have written to you?
I don't have that feeling. He didn't owe me anything. He had an official role. I had an official role. He didn't owe me any explanation.
Well, even officially, he owed you a letter to remove you. Did he not?
That's why I'm saying to you, it's not a personal matter. You make it seem as if it's a personal matter, personal to him. There's a governmental system, so there must be processes whereby these things are communicated.
And writing to you is part of that process.
Yeah, but presidents don't write letters to people, as you
Chief
know.
of Staff does.
I mean, so that's why I'm saying there's a system, and that system, obviously, at that time, also had its preoccupations.
Okay, now, I'm wondering, on the 30th of November that same year, GNPC announced that you were going to resume the prospecting for oil at Salt Pond.
Not prospecting,
production of oil at Salt Pond. 2 days later, this announcement about your removal was made. What's the connection?
I don't know.
Do you think there might be one?
I can't imagine how there would be a connection between that and then. In relation to Salt Pond, we had been working for some time on getting the Salt Pond field back into production. And we actually successfully brought the field back into production, you know. This was a field that had been shut in by the company that previously operated it, and we worked to get it resumed. I don't know how that is connected with an announcement about my being assigned a role different from being chief executive. But I'm not also ready to speculate. You know, I think that you're trying very hard to speculate about matters which...
Actually, I'm hoping that since you are here, we won't have to speculate, well, you know. You can tell us what happened.
I don't know what connection there is between production resuming at Salt Pond and an announcement that I'm no longer chief executive and I'm being assigned as advisor. I don't know what the connection is.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the accusations that Mr. K.T. Hammond has made. The first one being that you left the organization in a mess. Now, at the time you left, reports we're receiving are that, among other things, the GNPC often had to depend on the Provident Fund, borrow from it. Does that not indicate that perhaps you were cash-strapped?
During my tenure as chief executive, there was never an occasion where GNPC depended on the Provident Fund. The Provident Fund was a separately managed fund. GNPC never, whilst I was chief executive, depended on the Provident Fund.
Okay, that's categorical. Absolutely. It never happened.
Never.
But were you cash-strapped?
GNPC was not cash-strapped at the time that I left GNPC. GNPC had assets, it had liabilities, of course, and GNPC, because of its lacking capitalization from the beginning of its functions, was often having to operate under very tight circumstances. I mean, the story of GNPC's lack of capitalization is, I think, something that was well known at the time, but it was well known in the context of the fact that, you know, the government had many other responsibilities. This was a period within which, you know, it was not possible for a state-owned corporation like GNPC really to depend on government budgets. And the capitalization that had been promised at various stages in the early stages of GNPC was never really, you know, paid to GNPC. So GNPC had to be resourceful in the way that we proceeded in our work. And I think that when people talk about GNPC being in a mess, especially when Honorable K.T. Hammond talks about that, it's the same GNPC that had an asset like the Discoverer 511 that he could go and sell. And at that time, that asset alone was worth $24 million. That's one asset of a company that he describes as being in a complete mess. And you see, the real context of all that we're discussing today is that Honorable K.T. Hammond is being asked to give an account
So Tsatsu Tsikata there in the studios of Joy FM on the Super Morning Show with Kojo Yankson, and very interesting issues he was commenting on. You want to comment on a couple of them?
Yes, I heard Tsatsu Tsikata saying that he is entitled to the ex gratia. And I was just trying to figure out, was he sacked at the time? Was he removed? Did he resign? What actually happened when he was in prison or after prison? And are you aware that I think the legal department advised the board not to pay the ex gratia? So based on what did the board decide to pay the ex gratia? And I understand one of them, one Honorable Dagadu, has received his. And Tsatsu, I don't know. He said he's entitled to it, so he's going to take it. So if K.T. Hammond had not blown this thing out, for all you know, he would have gone to collect it quietly. And 1.6 million Ghana cedis, Roland, we are talking about...
He's entitled to 1 million.
But he and his wife is going to the same coffers.
They are two individuals, although they are married.
Two individuals under one roof. It's not Tsatsu Tsikata and his friend. It's Tsatsu Tsikata and his wife. So we are talking about 16 billion old cedis here. When government is not even paying statutory payments, when government is not fulfilling its part of the national health insurance, when government is mismanaging this economy, we cannot find money even to buy crude oil. When government is doing everything wrong, but we can find 16 billion old cedis of our oil money to pay as ex gratia. I think if, considering the caliber of Tsatsu Tsikata, considering his status, if he should come...
What caliber? He said he's worked consistently for the organization.
And is he entitled to it?
At the end of any service in any organization, you are entitled to a certain service entitlement.
Has he been working for the past 15 years?
No, but he's not been paid for work done the past 15 years. He's being paid for work done before the past 15 years. How did they do the calculation? Did they do the calculation based on... I think they did the calculation based on current salary. Yes. Why did they do it based on current salary? Like if he's not been working for the past 15 years, why didn't they do it based on? If he was chief executive at this time,
but he's not the chief executive.
That's what he would have been paid.
And the legal department advised the board not to pay. Based on what did they advise the board not to pay?
You think that is very crucial?
It is
very
crucial.
Instrumental.
And if the board came to Parliament and told the committee that they were advised by the legal department not to pay, but based on certain issues they decided to pay, that's a serious issue. And I think the board itself should be held liable for some of these issues. The committee should meet again with the board. They should not leave the board of GNPC out of the hook. No, they should not be.
Frida, there's been extreme criticism against K.T. Hammond and the likes of you keep criticizing Tsatsu Tsikata and the GNPC for taking the action that they have. This is just an action purely immersed in politics.
Well, you can say that up to a point, but I think that we have to look at what is happening at GNPC itself. What is happening with the drill ship? You just talked about the drill ship. And I believe K.T. Hammond also went in because of the way the whole process was mismanaged. And they had to salvage the situation. That's how come K.T. Hammond, at the time when he was a deputy minister, he was instructed to do certain things. The government set up an independent body, an inquiry into it. They invited K.T. Hammond, where he even went and wept, and he said the mother also wept and all that. And he gave so many documents to the then, what's the name of the judge who sat on that commission, the sole commissioner. Now the sole commissioner, he's come out with the report. Unfortunately, some people have been left out of the hook because they claim they were ignorant, which I don't understand. I don't even get it. Because for a lawyer of such caliber, and you told me that that person was ignorant about the law or about the situation, about what, but certain people should go and face Yoko when there are other issues to be discussed. So if K.T. Hammond had not come out with this issue, GNPC would have paid all these monies, and Tsatsu is ready to go for the money. When government for the whole of this year has not been able to pay the NHIS, I'm looking forward for that money to do certain things in my constituency. Likewise, all my other colleagues in Parliament. When government has not been able to fulfill its part of paying statutory payments, when government is still mismanaging the economy for us, when government has stopped paying teacher trainees, when government has stopped paying nursing trainees, but yet we can find money to pay judgment debts and to pay ex gratia. I think Tsatsu can do, Tsatsu and the four of them can do this nation.
Do you think that the payments were perhaps more rationally for moral reasons than anything else? That perhaps maybe he served, or all of them have served, so they deserve something?
If they deserve something, I don't think that the lawyers would have advised against it. But definitely the board sought the legal team's advice, and they advised them against it. That's where my issue is. You've sought for legal advice. You've been advised not to do it. So based on what did you go further to pay? That's a multi-million-dollar question that has to be answered. And the board had the guts to tell the committee that the legal people advised them not to pay. And they went ahead to pay. And one of them...
Well, the board is the board.
The board is the board, but why did you seek legal advice? If you think you could have taken the decision on your own, why did you seek legal advice? And if you've advised not to pay, why do you go further to pay? That's a whooping. We are talking about so much money here. And I always refer to my constituency. We recently celebrated farmers. Go and have a look at the roads in my constituency.
And your constituency is?
Tano North constituency.
In the
Brahafo region. Kwanta is the district capital. And we have other smaller villages like Yamfo, Bomate, Chadro, Batanos, and all that. Go and have a look at the roads. At the end of the day, they have to leave all their farming inputs out there on the farm for it to rot, because we don't even have silos, we don't even have any storage facilities, we don't even have anything for the farmers. But yet we can find money to pay for ex gratia. We can find money to go and plant trees that cannot be traced. We can find money to go and rear guinea fowls that cannot be traced. We can find money to pay for JIDA and all other things. I think Tsatsu and his team or his friends are doing a disservice to this country, and I don't think it's the best of things. It's even, I see it even as an insult for you to sit on radio, on air, and tell us that you are entitled to it, so you're going for that money. Then why are you taking Katie Hammond to court?
Very interesting point you make there. But at the end of the day, is the fact that the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament had looked at the matter, and they'll make their reports very much
I think they are
available.
still meeting with them.
Okay.
I know they have a meeting with GNPC and other stakeholders today, so they are still meeting with them and trying to thrash out some of these issues.
Okay.
But I think that it will be better for Tsatsu to do as a board than to sit on radio and tell us that he's entitled to it, so he's going for a whooping sum of 1.6 million Ghana cedis for himself and his wife.
Well, we have to call it a morning, but let's look at, before we go off the studio, let's look at this. A law lecturer at the Central University College, Yaopon, says the removal of judges found guilty of taking bribes should be seen as a win for rule of law and democracy. And we know this is stemming out from the Aremi Yawanas case, in which he investigated a number of staff of the judiciary as well as lower and also high court judges or judges of the superior court, so to speak.
Well, Roland, it is indeed a rule of law. And let me commend Anas for how far he's brought this country in terms of his investigative journalism. I think it's about time he moved into other areas like DVLA, GNPC, the school feeding program, and all those areas. And let me also commend the Chief Justice for taking such a swift action on Anas's video. But my issue here is that, you see, terminating the appointment itself is a punishment. I see it as a big punishment because they built their careers all these years, right from the law school, passed through the rank and file up to this level, and because of this issue, we're going back home. At this time, it's a big punishment on its own. But my issue is, if I have a case in court, and I face the lawyer, admits my guilt, and I show some remorse, it doesn't mean I should be left off the hook. It's something that
Don't you think that the committee has a capacity to determine which one has been extremely unlawful and which one has just been the ordinary?
Well, they do, but I don't know, based on what did they arrive at that situation, that some should be left off the hook just like that. Others should be given their entitlement because they showed some remorse. I've said it time and again that letting them go home alone itself it's a big punishment. They have a family. They have extended family.
They have a reputation.
They have
also.
a reputation, ever integrity to protect. And if they have to go home this way, it's unfortunate. It's a very unfortunate situation. I've been very, very, very emotional about this whole thing because we are all human. Today is the judges. Tomorrow it could be somebody else. So
you're afraid it could come to Parliament?
Well, I think he's been there already. And if you come to Parliament, I'm not in leadership.
Do you think this is a step for us to have great lessons learned?
A lot of lessons learned. And I think it should serve as a deterrent to all of us, especially when you are put in a certain position. You should know how to carry yourself. You should know how to manage situations. You know when and how to speak. We are in a global world now, and now we are, because of technology, anything at all can happen at any time. So you should be wary of what you're doing. You should be careful of what you're doing. And I think it should serve as a precedent to all of us. And it's a great lesson. But the unfortunate situation is where some people are taking their entitlements, others are not taking because of the excuses given that they show some remorse here and there. But I think the Chief Justice has done well. This is about the circuit court judges. We are yet to find out the findings from the High Court.
The Superior Court.
The Superior Court.
Okay.
It's unfortunate. You see, it's not only about the judges. I think the issue has affected Ghanaians as a whole, as a country. Our integrity is at stake. Everybody's watching, listening to us. It's on the internet. It's everywhere. And it doesn't speak well about us. It's not good.
It doesn't speak well for the image of the country.
No.
Well, thank you very much.
Not for the image of the judges alone, but for the image of the country as well.
Well, thank you very much. And Frida Prempeh has been my guest on AM Talk this morning. We've had some lengthy and interspersed brief discussions also on a number of issues. And I say Frida Prempeh, Member of Parliament for Tano North in the Bunafo region, thanks for speaking to me. She really has risen through the ranks, being an assembly woman in the first place here in Accra. Was it around Labadi?
Lako, yeah, Labadi.
For 2 terms. Kwaliwoko?
No, Lako electoral area.
Lako electoral.
Labadi, trade fair, cantonments.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of things those times together, but it's good. Now you've risen to become a legislator, and we're very much proud of you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're taking a break. When we come back, Becky will be around here to give us a lot more, the latest update on entertainment, and brought to you by ATL. Just stay on. We'll be right back.